Hey, so in today's video, we're going to be talking about Kustomize. What is Kustomize and how can Kustomize help us in deploying into different environments or different namespaces? So we'll have a use case wherein we have a blank EKS cluster and we'll have a dev and a prod namespace in there. And we're going to be deploying a sample deployment, a sample config map, and a sample secret, all managed and deployed through Kustomize. So let's get started. Okay, so this is what we're building. We have a blank EKS cluster in here, and inside that EKS cluster, we'll build two namespaces, dev and production or prod. And as for the resources, they'll have the exact same types of resources. So we'll have a deployment, service, config map, and secrets. And we'll be using Nginx as the sample deployment. We'll get the Nginx configuration from the config map. That means the configuration will be dependent on the namespace. We'll also play around with the number of replicas per environment. So in prod, there'll be 2 replicas, while in dev, just a single replica. And then we'll also test out the services. So we'll test out if we hit the dev service or the dev load balancer, it will point towards the dev deployment. So it will show in the web page, for example, like this is the dev environment. And same with the prod service or the prod load balancer. If we hit that, we hit this is the prod environment. Okay, and we'll be using Kustomize for this setup. Let's go. All right, so first let's check what we have in the EKS cluster. So kubectl get pods should be empty, and then kubectl get namespace. Let's see what we have in here. Yeah, nothing, just an empty EKS cluster. So let's go and start coding. Let's open up Visual Studio Code, and I did create a repo, AWS EKS Kustomize. The link for this GitHub repo will be in the video description. So if you want to clone it, you just go ahead. From here, let's go and create the base folder. So the base folder is where you put your applications. In this sample, this is where we're gonna put the Nginx. And if in your use case, for example, you're using Redis or Mongo, this is where you put the base config for that as well. Let's go and create that Nginx. Now let's go and create the deployment and service files that we need for Nginx. Let's go and name this Nginx deployment.yaml. And I'm gonna paste the code in here. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a deployment with a name Nginx deployment. Replicas is set to 1 for the default config. We'll be updating this figure in the prod namespace. This is pretty basic config. Labels, app is equal to Nginx, make sure they match. And then for the spec for the containers, again, pretty basic, Nginx and with the latest image. We'll be updating this as well for the prod namespace. Well, that's it for now. Then let's go and create the service that will create the load balancer. Again, pretty straightforward. It's a service with type load balancer and it targets the Nginx deployment that we just created here. Now to complete this base setup, let's go and create the customization.yaml. Customization.yaml. Let's also add in the resources. And we are using Nginx deployment.yaml and Nginx service.yaml. I can use this format since they're in the same directory. Okay, that looks good. So that's the base config. And now let's go and create a folder called environments. Oops. So the environments folder, it should be in the root, not inside the Nginx. So environments is here. Let's just close this up. All right. And then under environments, let's create our first environment, which is prod. And then under prod, let's go and create a file called customization.yaml. Let's go and paste that there. Right off the bat, we can declare the namespace where we want the resources to be created in. So I'm going to put prod in there. And then I am going to do the same thing as we've done in the base. So resources. And for the resources in here, I'm going to target the Nginx folder in that path. So I'm gonna go down, that's environment, go down to the root, and then base, and then Nginx. And that should do it. So let's just try this out. So in theory, if we run this, it should create the default config for the Nginx deployment and the Nginx service. Let's try it out. Let's go back to the terminal. kubectl get namespace again. And let's go and create the prod namespace. And let's run Kustomize. And for Kustomize, it's natively built in the kubectl. So the command to use is kubectl apply, but instead of -f, we're gonna use -k, and then environments, and then prod. All right, okay, that looks good. Let's go and check the deployment in the prod namespace. Great. Let's also get the service. Awesome. Let's just give it a minute to make sure the deployment and the service is up and running. Okay, I think that's a minute. Let's go and open up the browser. And I'm just gonna copy this out in here and paste it there. All right, there you go. Welcome to Nginx. So that is the default or the base configuration for this deployment. Now let's customize it. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code and let's introduce config map. Let's close this up and let's go to the Nginx deployment. And I'm just going to update this code with volumes and volume mounts. So what this does is that it creates a volume, and that volume is mapped to the config map. So we'll be creating this later. And then that volume has a name called Nginx config. See this volume mount? It will mount to that volume Nginx config and with this path. So that's for the config map. We also want to update the image, and let's also update the labels. So just to distinguish between dev and prod. What else do we want to update? I think that's about it. All right. So to update the config, let's introduce the deployment patch. Under prod, let's go and create a file called deployment patch.yaml. Okay, let's have them side by side in here. All right, let's just copy this out and let's update the figures that we need. So replicas, we want this set to 2. Selector, Nginx, let's go and prod. And same thing with this. For the image, let's update this one to 1.26.2. It's a random version. And that's about it. So for the values that you want to keep, you just remove them from here. So what this will do is just override the values in here in the base. So what we're overriding is the replicas, the labels, and the Nginx image. All right, that's cool. And now let's go and create that config map. Let's go and create a new folder called configs. And under the configs folder, let's go and create a file called index.html and paste that there. Let me just close this up. We don't need that anymore. Okay, so under this index.html, we can see that there's a body. And it says this is the production environment. So that is what we want to see when we hit the prod load balancer. All right, that's all we need. And now let's go and update the customization.yaml file in the prod folder. First, we want to introduce the deployment patch. So let's go and type in patches. And then the path will be, because it's in the same directory, I can just do deployment patch.yaml. There we go. All right. And then for the config map, we're going to create it using the config map generator. For the name, it will be, what's the name that we want? My config. So I'm gonna paste that in here. My config. And then let's reference that index.html file that we just created. So files. And then it will be configs and then index.html. Okay, I forgot one more thing, because in the deployment patch we're updating the labels. We need to update the labels for the service as well. So for that, I am going to create a new file called service patch.yaml, and then I'm just gonna copy out this one in here. And then for the selector, it's gonna be nginx prod. I don't need this. I don't need this. I just need to update the selector to nginx prod. Awesome. And let's add that in as well. Path is service patch.yaml. Let's save that. Since we're updating the labels, which are immutable, we need to delete the deployment first. And let's do that. kubectl delete -k environments prod. Okay, so we'll have a fresh deployment in here. Okay, now let's do a kubectl apply -k environments prod. That was quick. Let's go and check the pods. Let's see if it created 2. Okay, it created 2 pods because we set replicas to 2. And let's also get the config map in the prod namespace. All right, that's the one. And then let's go and check the service in the prod namespace as well. Awesome. Go, let's go and try it out and see if the index.html got updated. Let's bring up the browser again. Okay, so this was before. Let's just update this one. Boom, there you go. This is the production environment. All right, cool. So everything's working. Okay, next let's introduce how to create secrets. And same with the config map. Let's go and create a folder called secrets. And let's just create a file called maybe token. And then in here, this is a secret file or something like that. And then let's go back to customization.yaml. Same thing with the config map generator. Customize as a secret generator. For the name, let's just call it secret token. We're not gonna use this for the nginx deployment, but this is just to show you that you can create your own secrets so that it's not part of the base. So the config map and the secret shouldn't be part of the base anyway. Let's just update this one to secrets, and this one is token. All right, that should be it. Let's go back to the terminal and let's do a kubectl apply -k environment and then prod. Okay, so in here you can see that it created a secret, and then kubectl get secret in the prod namespace, and there you go. All right, nice. Now let's do the same thing but for the dev environment. Let me clear this up. Let's go and check the namespaces. All right, and let's go and create the dev namespace. All right, awesome. Let's go to Visual Studio Code and under environments folder. Let's go and create dev. Let's just close this up. Great. And then next, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna copy everything from prod to dev, and we'll just update as we go. First thing, configs, index.html. So this is production. I'm just gonna update this to, this is the dev environment. Cool. For the secrets, this is a secret file, -dev, maybe. There you go. Since we're not using this anyway. And then deployment patch, we're gonna update this replicas. The default is 1, so if I remove this, it should spin up 1 pod. For the labels, instead of prod, I'm gonna do -dev in here as well. And in here, I'm not going to touch the container image, so I can just remove this, and it should get the default image, which is the latest for Nginx. And that should do it. And for the customization.yaml, I'm just gonna update this to the dev namespace. The rest of the config looks good. Service patch also, we need to update this one to -dev and save that. All right, I think we're good to go. So in here, clear this up, kubectl, apply, -k, and then environments, and instead of prod, we're gonna use dev. Okay, 4 resources created. Let's look at the pods for the dev environment. Get pods. Okay, so just 1, which is different from the prod, which has 2. Actually, we haven't checked the image for prod yet, so let's do that. Describe, deploy. Sorry, let's get deploy first. In prod, Nginx deployment. Okay, so kubectl, describe, deploy, Nginx deployment in the prod namespace, and then let's grep for the image. Okay, 1.26.2, because that's what we put in the deployment patch. Now let's check for the dev, which should use the latest. Yes, there you go. Great. What else do we need? Oh, the index.html. Okay, so kubectl get service in the dev namespace. Cool. Let me just grab this. Let's go to the browser. And this is the production environment earlier. And let's open up a new tab and let's go and paste that there. It's missing an M. There you go. Let's see if it works. Great, there you go. This is the dev environment. Okay, let's just bring up the diagram again. So in here, we managed to create 2 namespaces, dev and prod. And dev has its own config, prod has its own config. When we hit the dev load balancer, it forwards the traffic to the dev Nginx deployment, which has the dev configuration. Same thing with prod. When we hit the prod load balancer, it forwards the traffic to the prod deployment, which has the prod config via the config map. All right, there you have it. Hope you learned something new. I'll catch you next time.